Hi, it's Pete the Bumbling Modeller, back again, as I always say. So, this is the second part of building a diorama base for the Academy 1/72 half-track and amphibious Jeep and little Harley-Davidson motorbike. First part was profiling the base to get some sort of elevation, covering it with sand to give it that beach feel, modifying the half track to fit into the scene I wanted, and just generally preparing to this point. Part 2 is going to be casting resin water, making ripples on the surface with water gel, and putting in a little concrete road across the top. So it's part of a playlist, and that's the point I'm trying to get across. So if you want to watch individual parts of it, this little amphibious Jeep is the first part of the playlist, and that's just built straight out of the box. There's a little bit of filler needed, but nothing much. The half track is built out of the box, but doesn't look like this. This has been modified subsequent to the initial build, and then there's part 1 of the base, as I say. So it'll end up as 4 parts, but you can watch all or none. So this half track's a standalone, the amphibious Jeep's a standalone. Making a sandy sort of base, which you could use quite happily if you wanted to depict desert vehicles, is a standalone video, except for the concrete road, which you'll see the other one. And then the casting resin water, which is something we've never done before, again will be standalone, so you can watch it all or none, or skip through, it's fine. So since part 1, the half track's had a few little bits. There's bits of plaster in those tyres, but I'm just going to leave them actually. A few little bits done, so I've put some, I'm tipping it the wrong way, some subtle rust streaking down here. Not much, just enough to make it look a bit blurred. Bit of rust down there, some down the front, just to sort of make it look slightly older than the Jeep it's rescuing. I was going to put a pin wash over it, but I think the dry brushing has brought out all the detail. I've painted a little cross on the back of that Jerry Crant white cross, and I believe this is something that troops in deserts did to identify a jerry can that had water in it as opposed to a fuel one. So how realistic it is, I don't know, but everything about this is trying to make things stand out, because by their very nature military vehicles are camouflage, and that means you can't see anything. So that's done, ready to be glued on. The little Harley Davidson still needs a bit of detailed painting, but that's going to be the last thing to go on the board, so I'm not too worried about that. So I want to put a length of rope to tie onto that once it's all glued down, and that'll be dangling in the water. And that was made out of a bit of cord used for model ship making, which I happen to have lying around. You could use cotton for what it is. Right, so on to the main thrust of this video. It'll be the concrete road and the watery base. Now, I've never done anything with acrylic water before. I'm completely lost. I bought this initial Resin Pro transparent water. It's 160 grams of it, a hardener and a main water, and that's fine, but it looked a bit not enough for what I wanted. I did a quick calculation, and if I've got it right, that'll only cover a depth of 3 millimeters here, which is a little bit shallow because this land here is raising up to 3 millimeters. Then I bought some more of it, and it looks like it's just a different bottle of it. It looks like it's the same stuff, it's just packaged differently. That one's packaged as a tester, and this one. Okay, we're back again, and there's no getting out of it. We have to pour the resin. So I've held on some perspex sides here with double-sided tape. Come round the bottom with masking tape to hold in. When there's been any obvious gaps, I've corked it with a bit of PVA because it's all I had. I probably come to regret that. I've got an old, well not old, it's a current kit box to contain any spills. I just want to check that's level now, put it back in again. I'm not too worried about it being level that way because you can get away with that, but I do need it. Oh. Which I don't think it is, so that might be a slight delay. Let's get a couple of blocks. Because the way my phone's sitting on its buttons, you're not getting the full contact. Try to keep them on anyway, just to... What have I done there? Why has that gone red? Okay, that's saying that's level, so we'll go with that. So, I've got an old self-leveling thinners container that I've cut in half, and still finding bits. Trying to get all the dust and stuff out of that, because once you pour it in the resin it'll go, but I wanted something pretty substantial because this resin may heat up when it mixes and I don't want something to come and deform. So it'll be a case of just mixing it, tipping it in and letting it settle underneath that Jeep and things so we don't get air bubbles, and then seeing how we go. If we get any bubbles on the top, of people, seeing people use blow torches and lighters to do it. So if I get a lighter ready, I might be able to burst some bubbles just by going over it. Gloves on because I don't know what this stuff's like. And I'm going to mix this blue and green dye in there to give it a sort of turquoise colour, but I'll count the drops that go in, because if I need to mix another batch, I'm still not convinced my measurements are right and this will give me enough depth. But if it doesn't, I need to only put, I can mix up the second batch quick, but I need to know how much dye to put in so it doesn't look a bit odd. So make sure it's finely clear. And component A, let's just go for it and see what happens. Can't see anything I've forgotten. It does seem quite a large volume now. Get a stirring stick, which I should have got in advance. And we'll have a new clean one rather than the old collection of half-used one. I've got a half-used one, but that ends clean. So I'm just going to mix that. I want to get it mixed, but I don't want to get any air bubbles in it, obviously, because that would ruin the effect. I'm not sure how cloudy this is when it dries. Then again, I can get away with cloudy. That's not going to be the end of the world. Right. Rivers are blue, so let's... ocean, sorry. 2 drops of that. And again, I suspect that's quite a potent dye, having seen other YouTube users play around with this stuff. So we'll just get all that mopped up as soon as we can. So we've got 2 drops of blue in there, and that's so it's way too blue, so I've made a bit of a boob there. Put a bit of green in, 1 drop of green, so 1 drop's literally all you need. That was a huge drop. This is going horribly wrong, but as is usual with these things, we'll just have to make the best of what we've got with that anyway, because we don't really know what we're doing. It's a first attempt. So all I do now, I guess, is slowly pour it in. I would say that's a bit too vibrant as a colour, if I'm being honest. I'd rather have that a lot lighter. So I think we need to just let that level out a little bit, then top it up where we need it. And there are bubbles and things on the surface, but then I'm going to put the gel over the surface, so is that a problem? I don't know. It does seem to be soaking into the sand, which may create a problem later on as well. Don't think the level's dropping, which is good. The fact that the sand's getting a bit moist is good. You're getting a lot of glare on that as well. I'm going to try that fag lighter trick to get rid of some of the bubbles, see if it actually works. I'll do it with the gloves off in case I set them on fire, because we're getting bubbles raising up on the surface now, which we don't want. To be fair, I've seen people use a works but hurts your hand. Okay, so we'll do that when we finally finish with it. I would say we're sinking in a bit because we're getting a bit of a line. I don't know if you can see that, a darker line around there, so we're probably losing a bit of height where it's soaking into the base. Definitely need to get some of them bubbles off the top, but if I can clamp that down. Don't try this at home, this looks really iffy. But it does smooth off the surface and get rid of the bubbles. So when you see people who know what they're doing, they tend to not do that. That's all right, we've learnt from that mistake, haven't we? We're still all right. We are losing resin. So I don't know if we're losing resin or the resin's wicking up into the sand. It could be a bit of both. Let's see if we can get rid of some of those bubbles with a bit of it. to sit back and drink tea while this goes on. I'll actually pause it for now, then we'll come back in a minute, and probably half an hour, and I'll sort of give you an idea of the drying time. One thing I did learn though is these are good, but they're oh sorry, my hand's in the way there, very, very potent. So for 160 grams of that, one drop at the most, possibly half a drop, but we shall see what it looks like when it's done. Okay, I think I'm probably going to leave this now. I've just had a glance through the instructions, which, yes, I know I should have done before I start. Oh, that's all right, they were stuck on super glue, not resin. I should have done before I started. I put everything in this box. No, that could be a disaster waiting to happen. I shall put these out of the way. So, they're saying a gel time of 3-ish hours. And by then I'm guessing that's the sort of finish you're going to get. And fully cured and hardened in 72 hours, which this is Sunday night, so you're talking Wednesday-ish before I can really get stuck on. I should be able to move this tomorrow so it can go on to other things. So I thought it would be that sort of time scale. So we're going to be a week before we see anything again. There's a few bubbles still appearing, but not many. I'm getting a slightly wrinkly surface. I can see it by moving my head. I don't know if you can on that. And a slightly oily surface. I'm assuming that'll level out as it sets, and that bloom on the top of it I think is probably dust and muck coming off the underlying layers. So I think if I did this again, I would mix up a small batch. I wouldn't even tint it, and I'd paint it on the base over the majority of the area that is going to be covered. Obviously you don't know where it's going to self-level. It's slightly not as diagonal as it was first was, and I think that's because I was panicking over topping it. But left it a bit lower, that probably would have been better. Yeah, I would have probably used the epoxy to seal in the bottom layer. Then I can wipe off any of that sort of bloom that's on the surface. Although that may just polish off. And to be honest, because you've got oily vehicles in the water, having that sort of surface swirl isn't the end of the world. But all in all, my base hasn't overly leaked. It's leaked down this side a bit. You can see on the sand there's a damp patch, but I'm thinking I might just put a thin layer of sand over the bits I'm not happy with, because it'll cover it anyway, and then use that ballast fix to hold it down once this is all set. But I'm not going to touch it now for 72 hours, let it all harden up. But that I'll check on the old footage. I don't think that's getting any worse. I don't think any of this, it may be, I don't think it was on the other side of that oil drum when we started, so it may still be leaking under the sand. But if I have to put another layer on the top, I'll put another layer on the top. It won't look as good, but it does seem to be spreading under the sand a little bit, and it's not anything like thickening at the moment. So we've still got a few hours where it could all go hideously wrong. But if the level doesn't drop dramatically, and it doesn't appear to be, there's no obvious wet marks on the Jeep. I don't want to move anything. Yeah, but there's no sort of indication it's fallen down, so the Jeep's got the same amount of cover as it's always had, which is good. So it just means there's a little bit creeping under the sand, not a lot. But again, I would probably do a clear layer over the lot, seal it all in, then do that, then matte varnish over the sand, which is a bit of a pain with the vehicles there. But I think there is, unless there's a recommended way of sealing this in, which I don't know what it is, I think we just have to find a way around that. I'll definitely, because I've got enough resin, I'll definitely do another watery scene with slightly less dye in it, and see if we can overcome these problems. I think that's creeping gradually underneath the resin there. So I had sealed it in, but just not very well. It might need a better sealant, but can we live with that? Yes, I think so. First attempt, I'm relatively happy. Talking too much as per usual. I'm going to switch this off. I'm going to look at the old footage and see how much that has crept around that oil drum, and I suspect it's quite a lot, but I'll give it 24 hours and then I'll come back and show you what it looks like in 24 hours, and that's when we decide whether we have to do another pour over the top to hide some of this or not. So I'll leave that for a minute and I'll see you soon. Hi, it's back to the watery base for this beach scene now. So sides have come off the base. There was a run underneath there which I'll have to grind off or chisel off, or I might just put 4 little feet on it, because that's gonna, the jolting of taking that off may disturb the model. That's the good news. The bad news is semi-disaster with the water. I think, well, 2 things have happened. Had quite a ripply surface on it, but not in a way I'd like. And I think that was because when I was heating bits to get bubbles out, I didn't heat the whole lot. So if you're going to do it, get a blowtorch over every inch of it. I had really smooth bits here where I'd hit it with the blowtorch and I was getting wrinkles. And I don't know if you can see them on the camera, those wrinkles here. They looked a bit, not the shiny bit, that's something else, I'll talk about that in a minute. It's all around here, that wrinkly stuff. That's where I got rid of the bubbles with heat. This area, then it caused this to shrink more and that to grow more, because you've got a flat surface area. It's all got to go somewhere, I suppose. If it shrinks, it's got to move it around. So either don't get rid of the bubbles like that, or do the whole area. Don't do it in a sort of halfway. So then I started sanding the ripples out. Realistically, I didn't need to, because I'm going to put a ripply surface on with this anyway, but I thought, let's do it. And when I did that, I started to break through bubbles I couldn't see before. So one of 2 things happening. Either you can't see the bubble till you hit it, then it goes a little bit frosty, so you can see little flecks here. I'll try and zoom in on that later on for you to see. Or there's a lot of surface tension here, and as you break through it, the bubbles shatter and become white. So this area was particularly affected, and this area was. So what all these gouges are here is where I'm getting a big bubble, and there's one here, for example. I've got a little instrument screwdriver I've sharpened up as a chisel, and I'm just going in and I'm just getting rid of that bubble. So you get a little pit. I'm not too worried about the depth of the pit, because I say we're going to have a ruffled surface anyway, but all I want to do is get rid of that. It's awkward to do this on camera, actually. Off camera it's quite quick to do, but you want to get all traces of the white out of it. It doesn't matter if it's a bit discoloured, but you don't want it white. And a little lip there. Only got a matching sea colour, but a dent in the surface. And I'm not too worried about the dent in the surface. And there's other places. This one here I've partially gouged out, but some of these are almost like little tubes and bubbles. They're quite deep. The depth is out of all proportions, the diameter. I'll do a lot of this off camera. I've been doing it off and on. When I've been coming in here with 5 minutes to spare, I've just been gouging out a few, so it's a bit of a pain, but it's not as much as a pain as, say, putting together individual track links. So around here we've got rid of a lot. You can see some subsurface ones there, not overly bothered by them, to be honest. I can get a few more out, but all over here now we've got little pits and gouges. There's one, I can probably get away with that because I'm going to put a bit of white water in this as well. But we'll just dig them out while we can. So just not being particularly neat, just, and there will be ways to hide this. So these little white ones here, they're a bit obvious and a bit too white. And this hasn't hardened as much as I thought it would. You can't get a glass-like polish on it, which is a bit annoying. Again, I think I mixed this when it was the hottest day we've ever had, or one of them, in June, and there's a lot of humidity in the air, and I think that's affected the way this is hardened, to be honest. I don't think it's a fault with the resin. So you can't get a good surface finish on it, but we don't need a good flat. We need a flat finish, we don't need a shiny finish, but it's another one gouged out. So don't worry, it looks awful. I say don't worry, I've no idea if this is going to work or not. I'd normally be not as ham-fisted, just trying to get my head in the shot. This is as much a voyage of discovery for me as you. I've just never really played with water before. That's it, let's cut that out. It's almost like a powder now, but it can't be because nothing powdery was in there. I think it's just as you sand the top, it relieves tension underneath, and any bubbles in there just pop and bang, and then you get this. It's going to be important to get all those bits off. Is there anything else it needs doing? There's a couple here. In close to vehicles, so I can put a bit of white water on it because you would get wave reflection where waves are hitting them. I was going to do it so that water's flowing this way, so there's calm bits on this side and ripply bits on this side, so that'll hide a lot of it. And the fact a lot of these bubbles are over the static grass is probably going to help as well, because it'll look like natural gases bubbling up from that. But yeah, it's just doing as much. And this probably won't be it, if I'm honest. And then what I'm going to do, because I'm going to coat this, actually to check how good it is as well, if you get a bit of water on it, yes, it'll just lick my finger. You can see how they're going to disappear when the gel coat's over the top. So you can see those two little white flecks are going to stay, so they're coming out. There's a little white fleck there. You see it from different angles if you keep tipping it around. So we've gouged a load of those out, and I'll probably carry on doing this over the next few days rather than do it all in one go. But now I'm going to get me transparent water gel from AK, and I don't want things to necessarily dip down into, I know it's going to be a ripple surface, but the flatter you can get to start, the easier it's going to be to control it. So what I've been doing is getting bits of this then on a cocktail stick and just dropping it into the gouges I've put into the surface. It shrinks back as well, so you won't get any high points, but it'll just ease it when we put the gel coat over later on. So it's just going to be a case of blobbing those in. And the ones I've done, although they look shiny and raised, they don't look white, so I think they'll be hidden when we get the waves on the surface. But it's just trying to find all the ones you've done and chucking a bit of this in every one. Again, it's probably an unnecessary step. I think you probably get away with just painting the gel coat on the top of it, but because I don't really know what I'm doing, it seemed a bit more logical to fill things before I went on to the next stage to get it as level as possible. And yes, I could have just sanded over the whole thing to get rid of the bubbles, but I've got a feeling the deeper I sand, the more bubbles will be exposed, so it'd end up with nothing. And also I've got a risk of damaging the vehicles. And again, I could have tried tipping another coat of resin over the top, but there's no guarantee that would hide any of the things. I may be worse off than when I started. So it's just a case of slowly, it's just trying to find your bits as well to blob the stuff in. Again, easier off camera because you can tip things up a lot more. And these aren't going to be sanded down, but it doesn't matter if the bit raises, so it does shrink quite a bit. So I'm going to leave that now. This takes, it's just basically a thick PVA, so it takes overnight to dry. It's very similar to that clear canopy glue I used on Zero actually. It doesn't properly harden, but that's going to be all right. I think we'll get away with that. I need to put the concrete road on, and then put the transparent gel on. If I put the transparent gel on, because it's a bit tacky, any dust from the cement may stick into that. So I think what I'm probably going to do is get every last bit of it ready, get all the road done, any spraying on that, and then put that gel over the top of it. And then when it's coming to the beach, I'll mix a bit of whitish green paint in with that gel and just put a bit of foam where it joins the beach. Where that resin crept underneath, I just put more of that ballast fix in and sprinkled on a bit more resin, so it's gone back to the original colour, so I'm quite happy with that. So I'm going to switch this off now, build up these sides, get some sand and cement and make a little mortar mix and just put a roadway in that, and then I'll show you me doing that because I'm going to do it on masking tape, so I can lift it up and crack it later on, so you get some natural sort of breakage there. This is just a temporary road slung down on a beach, and it's moving with the tides and starting to split and crack. So I'll be back when I've got that set up and we'll do the concrete. Okay, so those little bits of acrylic gel we put in that are going clear already. It's been so hot, and I think round here I'm happy to call that foam, so that's all right. Anyway, that's by the by. What I've done now is very roughly put some lolly sticks around the edge there to create a little lip. It's not going to be that deep, and this road will be very fragile when it's finished. So it's just roughly masking taped on. So then I need to mix a bit of cement. So for that, I'm going to pop some gloves on. It's not about keeping my hands clean. I've never had a cement burn, I must admit, but I know they exist. And cement's an alkali, so when it burns you, it kills the nerve endings. Oops. So you don't feel your skin getting damaged. So if you are going to play with cement, I would strongly advise PPE. Even though this is only a small amount, this sort of thing you'll do and leave on your hand and forget about. So pop a pair of gloves on, which is all the noise in the background. We've got a little bit of cement that we won't worry about where I got that from. And you need about 3 parts sand to 1 part cement, really. So if we put about 3/4, it's not that sciencey, but well, it is if you want to do it right. We put 3/4 of a cup of cement there, so that's 3/4. So if we put a couple of sand in that, so it's if you've got cement and you've got water, it's going to be fine. The more you put in, the harder it'll get in theory, but it might get too hard and too brittle, but I don't really mind with this. So we've got polythene on the bench, so we can just mix that all up and get it nice and homogeneous. got a feeling I'm going to run out of space quite quickly with this, but we'll go on with it. Kind of mixed in, so make a little well in the middle of that. And somewhere I've got me not very well organised today. This is just normal tap water I happen to have. On my bench, keep it in that little squeezy bottle just. We need to mix that in to get a nice stiffish mix. It don't need too runny. To be honest, if you get it right, you probably don't need the shuttering on the side. I've just done that, so I've got a bit of a guide. But this, what I want is a sort of roughly built seaside road. You see on a lot of these Mediterranean islands, no offence if you're from that part of the world, but you know, they're just built for light traffic over the summer. They're not really built for the rigours of heavy transport. It's just so people can get fishing gear and supplies to and from, you know, sort of things. It's on the islands I've been on holiday, a lot of them have sort of been cast by the locals when they've got a minute, rather than being on a municipal road. That's probably going to work all right. I don't think I'll need much water in, more water in now. Just give it a proper mix. Right, we have a little bit of a mortar mix there now. Now the reason I put the tape sticky side up is I want to, when this is done, I want to get a spatula underneath it and just give it a twist so you get a big crack across the road there. And that's the ultimate aim. It's not for this to stick down, because we can, even if we didn't do that, we can super glue it down and put a blob of PVA underneath it. This just needs to be a smoothish layer, and we've got to be careful we don't get it on the beach, which is going to be tricky. But it's whichever order you do these in, really. Probably might be worth doing this then the beach, I don't know. But what I've tend to find in the past, if I want to make a cement road or concrete road, the easiest way to use it is the materials it's made from, which is concrete, really. So just waffling. Ugh. Whatever you do, don't get it on your mat, just get it on your mat. Now that looks like it's going to be enough. I've got a feeling I won't have enough to do this, but it doesn't matter. Now you can see it bubbling up where the masking tape's lifting, and I could have put double-sided tape on the other side of the masking, on the other side of the masking tape to hold it down. The trouble is, I don't want any resistance when I lift this, because this is going to be such a delicate thing till it's glued down. And if you have to start prying up from the masking tape up from the base, then you'll have other problems, which I don't really want to encounter. So all I'm going to do is leave that like that. If there's any gaps on the beach side of things, we can sprinkle a bit more sand in there. But that's a concrete road in. And this is where it takes time. I'm not going to touch this. He says touching it again. For at least 24 hours, I want that to harden up. What I should be alright on this. Sometimes you look at it, if you've overworked it, it gets a bit shiny where all the water rises to the top and you get quite a glossy surface. If that's happened, I'd wait till it's set but not cured, so a good 12 hours depending on the temperature and whatnot, and then come over it with a toothbrush and just give it a little rub over, and that'll expose the aggregate and get a rough surface again. But for me, I think that surface is going to be about right for what one. So job done. Let's have a tidy up later on, but don't disturb anything at first. I'm not too bothered that that's all pulling away the side. I'll have to make some neat sides for it, but just for now I'll do that. I don't think it's going to slump, but you never know. So it's got all those dents filled. They look worse than they are at the moment because that white stuff is, there's a bit of a deep one there, I'll put a bit more, is still white. It does dry clear, so the white blobs you're seeing there aren't the air bubbles in it. It's this acrylic glue curing. Let me see it from a different angle. You see a different bit. It needs a bit of a fill. So I've worked myself into a bit of a standstill at the moment because this white, when it forms the ripples on the top, will be the finished layer. So any gloss is going to be in this white stuff. Do little bits there. And the last thing I want is to get any dust on it, which is why I've done the concrete road at that point, so that all I have to do is then put the gel coat on and it's finished. So I'm going to have at least 24 hours off this, possibly a bit longer. This will dry to a more of a cement sort of buff colour than the brown it is now, by the way. So I'll need to let that dry, pull off all these bits of masking tape, put some feet underneath it, figure out how I'm going to tidy up these sides, which I've sort of got that in my mind. I'll use bits of balsa to pack up those gaps and glue them round, then glue sides full on. I don't want to spend too much more time on this because I've got other projects pending, but we're getting there. So that has to dry. When I can handle that, I should be able to gently cut the masking tape, lift it, crack it, put some blobs of super glue underneath and glue it back down so that never moves again. And then we're on to making waves and wavelets in the water, really, and seeing where we go from that. Okay, back to the on the beach vignette. Let's move these out of the way. They need to be in that specific-ish order. So, oops, we've made the concrete road. I've cut off the framework we had holding everything in, and I've actually put a few splits in it by accident here, and it's crumbled at the edge. It's crumbled a bit there, but the reason I had the masking tape upside down is so we can lift the road up when we want to do some damage. So clearly where you're going to get a half track coming on and off a rural beach road, it's going to start to split and crack. So I'm thinking if we start to put little bits of stuff underneath where this half track comes on and off, we can just gently push and we get some relatively convincing cracks, like the road's been heavily abused, which it just has by me then. And then locally we should be able to gouge the odd chunk out like that. At least one of those is going to disappear for life. Not so much down here because nothing's going to go on this side of the barrel, so that was a mistake that we'll have to live with. But it was that sort of thing, just to get a bit of damage in these areas, just to give it a bit of character, so that can stay off permanently. And this is why I didn't put the other water on the top yet. We've got that nice big crack we formed here. Can we get any more out of that? Might be able to just gouge a little. Just to make that a little bit deeper. Oops. A bit more fell off than I'd like there, but that doesn't matter. Well, it does matter, it's a bit too much, but it doesn't matter in real terms because nothing really matters. This is just us playing about. So now I'm going to gently lift this off. I'm going to put a blob of super glue down here. Covering a lot of the area, right up to the edge where it's there. I'm going to gently lift it back on again. And areas like that where we've got too much falling off, we can live with that because we can get the ballast freeze on this again in a minute. Let's try and get things back. So that's our watery PVA mix, and we're going to get prepared and we're going to concentrate first on the areas where there's cracks. Just soaks into that and binds it all together. Okay, so that one I did earlier when I broke it, when I was initially playing about. Eventually the whole road surface will be done. This is just to stop things moving around too much at this point. So we bound all that in, and somewhere over here I've got more of the sand we had on the beach, because we want the beach sand to be the sand that appears in all these cracks and crevices. Then eventually we'll put a bit of fine dust on it as well, but we'll just fill up these little areas. And that bit there where we've got a big hole, we'll just put a lot on that. Get a softish brush and just get off what we don't want, so it just stays in those crevices. Down here we're not as fussed. It can be a bit more virulent there because it's by the actual beach, but on the, I realise we've missed a bit there, on the actual beach head itself, I want the boundary between road and beach slightly blurred. We don't want it. To be such a hard line. That was on tight before till I put my ballast fix on. So the ballast fix does release itself. It's quite weak by the look of it. So as soon as you get it wet again, which is quite handy to know. So that was, excusing the pun, rock solid this morning. Right, anyway, I'm going to let all this dry off. Then if we have to, we can put another coat of sand across it, but what I'm probably going to do is go over this with some sand coloured pigment, to be honest, just to blend everything in, to bring it up from the beach. So there isn't a great deal we can do there. We'll need to do something with these blue edges, but once we've got a border on that, that's not going to be too bad. Because we've got a bit of an overhang at the back now, we'll have to fudge a border on that, but we can do that with filler. It doesn't really matter. Or there's ways around it, let's put it like that. So really I need to stop messing about with this. And have faith on my glue working and leave it there. So be back when that's dried off. For you a couple of minutes, me probably a good 24 hours, and it's probably going to be a bit longer than that. This overhang there I can pack out with a bit of balsa that I'll paint black, and then so when you see it, I'll have a back plate glued on here just to stop everything sliding off, but it's pretty firm on the board now. So that's it for now, and I'll be back when we're a bit further down the road. Okay, we're on the last sort of leg of this now. It's gone on a bit, but it's new to me, so I wasn't expecting to be quick, to be honest, but grot there. So what I've done since you've been on is I've put a bit of a balsa, keep forgetting where the camera is, and also something's just popped on my screen, sorry, no, I don't want that. A bit of a balsa edge all the way around it, just to tidy it all up a bit. I've left the front there so a bit of light gets under the blue, but I don't think it'll work. So that's that done, and now we've got, the other thing I did was gave the concrete a little bit of a wash with a mixture of sand and grey just to darken it up because it's a bit too close to the sand colour of the beach. I'm not overly happy the way that's turned out, if I'm honest. I think that's a bit contrived, all the cracks and potholes, but we'll go with it. So the first thing I want to do is deal with all these bits where I've got gaps. I don't mind that so much, but where I've got big chunks missing out, I'll just do this, get a bit of the sand reused. And that's just to hide where the masking tape's come through, to be honest. And sweep everything I don't want off the road into the little gaps. And get some of the ballast fix we've been using all along. And just drip a bit in. And that'll just lose those. My computer wants me to sign into all sorts at the moment, and in doing that I can't see what's on the screen. It's asking me to sign into email. bit annoying, sorry, because I can't see what I'm pointing at. I don't know if you're seeing it. So yeah, I'm just putting a bit of me ballast freeze mix, which again is the Vallejo thinners and PVA glue, just to don't mind. So that gap down there, that's okay. I don't really mind that. I could have wanted to, for what it is, why not? Tip a little bit down there. Smarten up a bit, wouldn't it? Oh, a really good clean up of this bench later on. So let's just sweep that into that gap. Being lazy, it took about 2 seconds to do, didn't it? And it does improve the look of the back end of that. The sides I'm not too fussed by because it'll go into the water if I'm not careful. Just freeze all that in place. See, another dry bit there. Right, so that's that all done. Now the next thing I want to do is try and blend in features of the road and the beach. So I've got some MIG sand pigments there. My thumb's right over it. Gulf 4 sand, doesn't matter what it was. Just want a sandy, dusty thing, and it'll be in areas like that pothole just to help it out. But in general, hit the road with that and it should cling to it, bring out bits of detail. Just generally tie everything together, especially around the edge of the beach there. It's the same colour as the beach sand, but it doesn't necessarily matter too much. Just highlights worked into there a little bit, and then I'm going to get a bit of paper towel and just soften it just a touch. So if we get that, bit of normal tap water, just then hit the heavy bits, just lifting it off. It'll still stay in, but just, and I don't want it even, I just want to blot it so I get in patches. We can always go around that later on and add more or take more off. I'd rather not, say once the water's done. But as that dries, it should just start to blend in the bits we've done a bit, which was the whole point of that whole sand thing, was just a blending exercise. And you're not going to get uniformity on a real road and beach, so the patchiness is what we're after. But things like that pothole there, it's staying in that, where it's lifting off other areas, which is the sort of thing I wanted. So I don't think I'll do much more than that on that. We're getting to the bit now where we can almost call it a day. So put that away there. I've got this brush, it's dust, and I want to get all the dust I can off here. Suppose I should really dust the bench, but the next bit we're going to be going towards is putting ripples on the water. So I've got this water gel, transparent one. I've tried it out on a bit of perspex, and it seems okay. So what I'm going to do is put the ripples on it, then you have to leave it a period of time. I think it's 24 hours till it's completely white. Then I'll mix some of this with some white and green paint to make a sort of froth, and I'll just go around the edges and round some bits of it with that frothy mix I make. But this is initially just to get ripples on the surface, because you only need the slightest breeze, obviously, and you see the sea's really rippled. So, and it also hides the fact that I made a bit of a mess earlier on. So we'll get a nice clean brush, and then it's just a case of stippling this on. This is the first time I've done this in anger. I say I played with it, but I didn't do much. But it seems to hold a bit of height, so we will get that bobbly look in it. That may disguise some of the air bubbles we've got in there. I'm hoping. I can't do anything until the morning anyway. It's once done, it's done. But now I've done everything I want to do there, and I don't mind the brush getting a bit dirty. I'm just going to bring this area up. This is the shallowest part of the beach. So I was just going to bring the waves up onto the sand there. Not necessarily here because that's quite a steep shelf, but underneath this little half track it gets shallow there. There's a ridge there, so it wouldn't. So we can just blend the beach in with the sea a little bit and have it going up a little. And then I'll come along and say with a white bit later on where it's just breaking and frost these areas, because they'll all dry clear. But that's, apart from that next layer, say I'm going to put on with a bit of white in it and gluing the little motorbike in place, we are just about finished with this. So I would imagine this will take overnight to dry, even in this heat. So when it has, I'll come back and I'll so put some white caps where I feel they're needed on this, and then I may bring a bit of a darker wash in a stripe down the road there, as our vehicles have been straddling that way and left an undisturbed bit in the middle. I'm quite liking the way the sand's improved the look of these potholes and cracks in there. That's looking a lot more realistic now. The blend on the beach I'm not as happy with, but you can't have everything, can you? And I might be able to further blend now with a bit of water. Actually, let's just try it while I've got a chance. All this is just trying to experiment and see what happens really. So let's just of course, this is all a bit wet. When it dries, it'll look a bit different. Let's faff about with that a bit more. Let's just do that. Fade that towards the wall. And I think that is where I really need to stop mucking about with this, because I'm going to make it go horribly wrong. So we'll leave that there. 24 hours that white gloop should be dry. We can put some very gentle white caps on it and little feathers where this rope's in the water, you know, just a little hint of white there where the current's pulling it through, and probably little bits of white coming off the end of these vehicles here, because that's what you get as the water hitting it foamed up. So yeah, no idea what it's going to turn out like. Your guess is as good as mine, but we'll leave it there for now. Okay, I'm on the final sort of bits of the watery side of this now. The water's all dry, so you're getting the nice ripples on it. I'm getting air bubbles around here. You can't see them, but I can. It's always going to annoy me. That doesn't matter too much. I don't know if you can pick it up, but the road's got sort of sandy area here, then it goes back to a darker concrete, so sand's been ground onto there as vehicles are coming in and out, so that's quite a nice effect. But I want to put some white water just on the edges of the waves are breaking on the sand. Don't really know what I'm doing, but I've got a lump of the resin left over from when I mixed it up to cast it, so I'll use that as a palette so I don't have to throw anything out when I've finished. And I've got this white, which it's UN white and written on there. It's white with a bit of buff, and I used it when I made a UN armoured car. It's just a shift away from white. It's not as bright as white, which is what we want. So I'm going to think that might be what we need, but I don't know. It might be a bit, I might need realistically a bit of a blue or a green in there, but I don't really know. Let's mix up more and move on, which is always wise. And I don't know how much this I need in the gel. I don't know if the gel will mix in with it. It's all in a bit of the unknown, but we're trying it together. So that's me white. I'm going to use to stain the gel. Got a couple of brushes I used last time. I've reused this one. Ooh, it didn't wash out very well. Wash out this one and this one, because I'm going to need to have a little bit of white water around. If the longshore drifts that way, there'll be a little white feather coming off that and bits around the back of here, which might be able to put in a bit more precisely. But I shall get a big dollop of this, the AK gel again. I hope this doesn't go off in a pot, because I've got gallons of it. I don't think I'm going to use it again in a while. We'll get a huge amount of that compared to the white paint. We want the white to be semi-translucent. We don't want it to be. It's a flat white mixed in with buff, by the way. It's not. Got a bit of paper towel everywhere, and it's going to be messy. Where's another bit of paper towel? Probably need that again in a minute. Let's get the. This is an accident waiting to happen, isn't it? So let's get the lid on that. Alright, not sure that's fully on. Hopefully all that will be edited out anyway. So let's get this. It's putting a bit of a creamy colour into that, so I think it's working. Not sure you can see that as well as I can. So I'll say that's thoroughly mixed. Now it's just going to be a case of playing with it, really. So you're going to get a bit of white as waves break. That sort of foam you get. May happen a little bit Further back we get reflection. Hopefully this will look alright. Got a feeling I could have stuffed up a bit of a model here, but there you go. You don't know till you try, do you? You're definitely going to get bits coming in here and fluffing up onto the beach. And around the side of this Jeep you're going to get a bit of white water where it's pushing into it. I should have took photos what happens on a beach, shouldn't I? But and then it's gonna, I think, in theory, sort of feather out around here and fade back. Just where it's wrapping itself around the vehicle. No idea what this is going to dry like at all. It might. That seems to be going sort of semi-clear. I quite like that. It's not. It's taking some of the harshness out of it. Now, one thing I do want to do, and one of these little bits should pick up quite nicely, is where this rope's dangling in the water. Build that up and just. Feather it out, because again you will get a disturbance where that was if the water's flowing. Bring a bit more back here, I guess. Because it's not drying as harsh as I thought, I'm quite liking the effect now. Saying that, in the morning it might look rubbish, and that might all dry away to nothing. Then I'll be putting more on, but I'm trying to do it late at night when it's a little bit cooler with this weather, in the middle of the hottest heat wave ever or something, I don't know. So I was trying to get this done when it's a bit cooler so things don't set quite as quickly. It seems to be drying a bit paler than I'd like, but that might be alright later on, because I had a lot of white up there and it's sort of gone down to nearly nothing. So I've got a feeling this will be multiple coats of the white just to get the effect I want. Over the tops of some of those waves, so it's like they're being a bit broken up with wind whipping across the top of them. Another reason I'm doing this, it'll hide those bubbles a bit better because we'll have this illusion. A few places, not everywhere. I'm thinking this side's going to be more sheltered than this side, so that's how I did the original ripples, so this I'll do the whitening and lightening, I think. And I'm trying to pick the taller waves rather than the short ones, so they're just breaking against things and you're getting wave reflection, and it's all that sort of geological malarkey. I suspect when I look at it in the morning I'll think, what have I done? That's too pale, but that's alright. Because there's a reef underneath here, there's going to be more disturbance, so we can do that. Yeah, I think we're drawing a little bit too pale, so I shall chunk a bit more on around here. If it is pale, then I might just come over with white paint for these areas rather than use a dyed gel actually. But I'll do that just to take some of the gloss off the water where it is breaking, but where it's drying here it's looking ever so pale, so I think we do need to come in and think of something else. Around here it's okay because most of the white is going to be in this sort of zone. This is going to be a bit of additional, but things like that feathered edge are just dying a death, so let's just try this with my UN white, as I call it. Maybe a bit harsh now, so we can lift a bit of that on a cotton bud. And go in with a bit of that gel we've got, a bit white mixed up. As that's a bit of both, it might work. That's a bit heavy though. That's the sort of effect I was looking for, I think. Maybe. Let's just chuck a bit. On these edges here. See what we come out with. So it needs a bit more white hard up against this Jeep, doesn't it? And we know if we get this, get a wet cotton bud, we can just gently ease that. It's not quite as stark. So yeah, I think we're starting to get on here. We do almost a watery mix that white. That's way too much. So we were to find, I don't really want to use that palette because it's silver and it's still got wet gloop in it. It's silver and it lights up the whole area. Let's use the underside of that. We can get a few blobs of our off-white on that. I can always come over these and touch them up in another way later on. And the smallest bit of thinners with it. Not bothered what thinners it is, I just don't want it quite as harsh, I want it semi-translucent. And now if we start to use something. That's enough of that. I need to wash out brushes and call it a day and see how it dries. This bit I'm not overly happy with. That bit's looking better, and I think if it starts to come in and blend a bit of that with more waves just using the clear gel, that'll be alright. Sort of semi there. It's a bit more dynamic than just a glassy pool anyway, which is the main thing. So you're seeing it from the above angle where it looks quite nice. Other angles maybe not as realistic. I don't know, but we shall see. So final touches on the water next. Glue the motorbike in place, and I've got another half track which is actually 1/76 scale, but if you look at the right angle it does give you the illusion that they're roughly the same size, but you've got a scale effect. And because I've got that one kicking about, it's an old Airfix one made up with a V2H brass conversion, so it doesn't look massively out of place scale wise. So I'll probably put there just as another bit of interest because I happen to have it kicking about, but it's not part of the original Italeri kits. So we'll call that a day. We'll get back tomorrow where we'll have to do a bit of tidying on that white almost certainly, but not too unhappy with it. And yeah, motorbike on and job done. So I'll leave it there and see you soon. Right, I think we'll call this finished now. So last night for me, you saw we put all these white ripples on the waves. I wasn't overly happy. I was happy with the ones that have mixed with the clear media. I should have just gone with that, but the ones I've painted on, I think they were too white and stark, so I've mixed a bit of what I had with UN white, which was just an off-white colour with a bit of, can you see that? Sorry, I've changed the camera angle so you can see things better. Bit of light sea grey, and that way just dulled it down a bit. I think it's still too glossy around this area, so I was going to carry on with it, and I may do. I'll slap a bit of matte varnish on that because foam is white. Same around this truck here, it's just a bit too shiny. The little Harley Davidson's glued on. To paint that, I just painted it with the. Let's see if you can see it there. Oh, that's not fixed on, by the way. That's not part of it. I've painted it with the olive green if you use everything else. Dry brushed it with a bit of grey and painted the wheels with this AK rubber black pen, and the leather seat with this sort of reddish brown chipping colour, so it looks like a dark red leather, and I think that's worked out quite well. This little half track, nothing to do with this kit. It was an old Airfix 76 one with a photo etch conversion to it, so I just put it on there because I want it to go somewhere. And although it's not the same scale as this, I say from a distance it looks like that's just a little bit further away, so it works. The only other thing I've done since last night, I'm not sure you can pick it up, is I've just sprayed a very faint white demarcation line to mark the edge of the road and the start of the beach, because obviously this is a wartime thing without headlights, so that sort of thing could be everywhere. And where it's gone over potholes, I just haven't sprayed it, so it looks like it's just been chipped out, and that sort of adds that extra little depth of colour, and the white on that ties into the white on the sea, and it all works out really. So this was something I've never done before, playing with the resin, and I've learned a few things. So the first thing was, when I first put it down, you saw me drop that cigarette lighter and it's burning off the top, because that gives it a nice flat surface apparently. But because you was using a cigarette lighter, I couldn't get all the way over it, so I ended up with these ripples on the surface, and I think that was either the moisture in the air and a differential in the heat pattern, or just the heat pattern, but either way it was a bit ripply. So I tried sanding it back, and when I did that, a lot of little bubbles started to appear. Now I don't know whether they were breaking through the surface of a bubble that you couldn't see before and dust getting into it, or as you break through the surface of it, there's a lot of surface tension and it causes the bubble to shatter inside and you get that white thing. And because I couldn't get the white out of the larger bubbles, I think that was it. So I spent a lot of time digging the bigger bubbles out. You can still see some of the pale white ones here, which is why I've gone for these white ripples on the waves to try and hide them in. Now on reflection, I think you could probably get away with putting this AK transparent gel, where are we? Transparent gel straight over that ripply surface without filing it back, so you wouldn't have the trouble with the air bubbles. You can put a layer of it on top of a layer of it, so if you did get any undulations. But I was at the coast yesterday, and when you look at the sea, you get a series of waves and then you get the ripples on top of the waves, so the fact it wasn't even would have worked out quite well. So if I was doing it again, and I probably will because I've got another batch of resin, I won't care how ripply the surface is, providing it hasn't got air bubbles in it, then I'll just hit it with that transparent gel afterwards, and I think I'll get the same effect. So yeah, areas like that, now looking at it, just too glossy, that just needs a bit of matte paint on it. In itself, just level everything up, pour the resin, it isn't a problem. The cement hasn't worked as well this time as it has on other ones, but I'm still quite happy with it. The Italian models, which is those three, not the thing in the background, have turned out really well. Relatively happy. I don't know if let's see if you can see it. With that staining on the oil drums, I think that's worked out. Making your own oil drums so you can dent them and batter them is a thing worth doing. So yeah, not happy with the blue. I think that's way too blue. I put literally one drop of the dye. I used a blue and a green to get a turquoise, but put one drop of each. I think half a drop of each would have been more than sufficient for a pour that big, which was about, well, that pour and that lump I've got left over was 160 grams of resin, to give you an idea. So that probably would have been a little over 120 grams of resin in that bit. So just be careful with that. The AK ripples, I like the way they work, and you get the light catch on it, does look like a ripply sea, and you can get all that going on. All very nice. But as I found out yesterday here when I put my thumb in it, it does stay soft for a long time. I don't know if it'll ever harden. I think it stays almost like a rubbery consistency when it's finished. I'm not sure, but that's the impression I get, which is fine providing you're aware of it. But then if you're going to store this anywhere, you probably need to make sure that dust doesn't get on the water, because it's quite sticky, and you might find you've got bits of dust you can't ever brush out of it. What else? What are the pitfalls with that? That was about it really. Yeah, just watch out for that. It's staying quite a sticky thing. In AK's defence, I'm doing this in the hottest July day since 1977, and it may well be it's just too warm for that to fully cure, and when the temperature drops a bit it will do. But so I'm not overly bothered by that. I think that's acceptable. So my bench is a mess. That patch of grass I put in as seaweed I think worked quite well. Otherwise you've got a large area of nothingness there, and if I'd done it again I probably would have brought it a bit further over. Just you've got a model there, a model here, and then nothing in this space, so you need something to broaden it up. But all in all, it was something different, and I've quite enjoyed it, and I'll certainly do something like that again. And I hope you've enjoyed watching it. So what I shall do in a minute is have a bit of a tidy up so there isn't any clutter in the background, take some detailed nice high definition photos for you and put them up on the end of this, and then this will be over and I'm on to making a ship next. So the ship is part of another build, so it'll be an ongoing project over a few months, so I'll no doubt throw some models in between. But that's the end of the little vignette we're calling a day at the beach. So if you have been patient enough to watch it, thank you, and I'll see you again soon. Bye.